Hi, I'm Wyatt.
And I'm Grace.
And you're listening to our dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vodyssey Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and I don't know that I have ever been more excited about an episode that I'm going to be recording. And well, I've got a guest on with us today, and I am not even going to try to tell this story and give much of an introduction because this is one of those stories that I could not do any justice to. And so we've got one of our longtime Vodyssey Empire Club members, Benjamin Kimball, joining us today. So Ben, thanks so much for joining us. And I'm so excited to dive into your story with everybody.
Thank you too, Shawn. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So just a little bit of a preface. So Ben came and joined me back in about June-ish, June of 2020. So right after COVID hit, and really wanted to start building his lifestyle asset portfolio. And when we talk about a story of grit, determination, bumps in the road, to say the least, that doesn't even do it justice. And so I'm excited to dive in because if you own a property, if you're thinking about getting into the property, or you're just looking and to hear an inspirational story about somebody that really kept going and chasing their dreams when a lot of challenges and a lot of roadblocks came up, then listen to this story and stay tuned with us today. So Ben, I'm gonna dive in and let's just rewind a little bit back and tell them where you're from, what really kind of got you interested into doing the vacation rentals, kind of what your background is. And then we'll dive into, as you started running down the vacation rental road and started building the assets and portfolio that you had. And spoiler alert, there was a total loss on one of the properties right out of the gate where 999 people out of 1,000 would have just said, okay, I'm done with it. And so you guys, I'm really excited to dive into this story, but before we start there, let's start with where you started from and why we got interested in doing this.
Sure. So my family and I live in Central California. We're not in Los Angeles or San Francisco. We're out in the farmland.
Okay.
Different part of the state than most people are knowledgeable about. We are at the foot of the Sierra Nevada mountains, and we are about 45 minutes from Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. And so while agriculture is the big business around here, we also get a lot of tourism.
Yeah.
Yosemite is not that far away either, about 2 hours from here. And so we have a lot of mountain wonderland in this area that are really good locations for people to vacation to. I grew up as a kid in this area with a grandfather who had a vacation home, a cabin, and we have a lot of fond memories going up to Grandpa's cabin occasionally while I was a kid, and I always wanted to repeat that, create that for my own kids. And years went by, we hadn't really been able to work it out. We did a number of real estate type investments in Utah, where my wife's from, in California, buying, selling, renting out. Never made a lot of money doing that. Sometimes we made a few bucks and it was really nice. And sometimes we actually lost money on deals because of the cycles of the market. But overall, we are people who appreciate real estate in general as a vehicle of building wealth and building stability, and have seen that work out. We had no experience though with short-term rentals or vacation homes, but we still had that gnawing desire to go that direction. We just had no knowledge or really how to do it, how to set it up, how to run it, where to do it, etc. And so COVID came around and we finally started figuring it out.
Right.
The first place we turned was actually you. You're the first and best option we came across for learning the skills and the techniques to do this. And so we signed up for what was then Lifestyle Asset University.
Back in the good old days, the old name. Yeah.
Took the class. We'd already started looking at areas of where we thought we'd do this. And one of the first things we did in the class was the online analysis tools, which helped us really, we use Mashvisor more than anything, and it really helped us see what was going on in all these different communities in the mountains of California. And areas that we thought would be really strong actually turned out really poor. And I thought maybe it was a glitch in the system, I've come to find out later that no, it was no glitch. Those areas are actually really struggling, and people with vacation homes there are just always struggling. There's too many of them. It's just the things haven't come together yet. Meanwhile, there were other areas in these mountains that were red hot and they were not discovered yet in a large way. And
right.
so the very first thing you did for us was help us figure out where the best places were to do this.
Right. Well, that first step, right? The right location, the right property, and sometimes it's different than we think going into it. Like you mentioned, sometimes the areas we have our eye on sometimes don't underwrite the way that we think they're going to, and so it's good to know that for sure going into it. When you got into this, just so everybody has a little bit of a background, what was paying the bills? What's the day job? What pays the bills day to day?
Sure. My career has been in city planning. I've had a government service job my whole adult life.
Yeah.
Worked for several cities. I work for the county here. I currently work for the transportation agency. So I have a steady paycheck, but I don't have any way of building wealth beyond that.
Right. And,
so
and that's where I wanted to go, is just so that everybody knew as we start to go through this story, we weren't this, the municipalities don't pay millions of dollars a year in salaries. And so you weren't coming with a whole bunch of, just bags of cash to go make this dream a reality either.
No, that is true. We had a little bit of savings. I would just say about 25 grand in savings. And that was it. And so you're absolutely right. And we had done other deals in the past and had made money off other types of real estate, but
yeah,
nothing that was going to help us retire out of government service and move on to other things we really want to do.
Awesome. And so as we kind of were navigating some of those locations and properties now, we're looking at budgets too, right? We're saying, okay, we got to find locations that not only have the potential to produce, but we've got to make sure that they stay within our budgets as we're starting to go run down this road.
That's right.
Yeah. So we find that we identify a couple areas, and then I'll let you kind of take it from there. And this is for context for everybody. This was back in mid 2020, right? We were kind of right in the middle of COVID, but not everything was still kind of like new to us. But this is like mid 2020 that we started running down this road, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at an area again. This is smack in the middle of where my grandfather had his cabin. So we know this area well. There's a highway that runs through Sequoia National Monument, not Sequoia National Park. It's different. And in the National Monument, there are a lot of big sequoia groves. The most famous one is called Trail of 100 Giants. A lot of people come to this area to see that, but without the expense and the crowds of the national park. Right. A place you could do more recreation. And it's a place on the map internationally. A lot of people from Europe and Asia come right down this road, going to Trail of 100 Giants and need a place to stay. And it's not built out. There's not a lot of hotels. There's not a lot of places. And these cabins were doing remarkably well at that time. Everybody who had a place was making money, like you say, during that. It was the rise of Airbnb plus all the tourists. Yeah. People here were just giddy about it. And we'd found our spot, right? Yeah. The first thing we did, we didn't quite have enough for a typical down payment on a conventional loan. We were also faced with a lot of competition out of the Bay Area and Los Angeles. People were flooding out of those cities into rural California during COVID. They were fleeing high costs of living. They were fleeing crime. They were fleeing COVID itself. They'd rather be out in a remote place to wait out the disease. And so these people were coming with sack loads of money, making all cash offers, bidding things up, and we were at quite a disadvantage in that process. We did locate a vacant residential lot in one of these little mountain communities. It had a giant sequoia right there at the property. It was in a beautiful place called Sequoia Crest, a nice little town of about 500 cabins, and in the middle of a giant sequoia grove. It's the only place on earth where you could have private property in the middle of a sequoia grove. Everything else is public land. And the 5th largest tree in the world is right there in the town. And
Wow.
so hiking, a little pond for boating, great fishing in the area, all the things that I like to do.
Yeah.
And so we had just enough money to buy the lot. We bought it. I had worked previously with the county before. I knew the building permit process. I was able to do the research and know what was legal as far as short-term rentals. And everything looked good. We would be able to figure out a way to fund construction of a nice cabin in that area right on this busy tourist route. So 2 weeks after we closed, as we were trying to get things together, the Sequoia complex fire erupted just east of there and took over 100,000 acres, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly how big that fire was. No one was really scared at first because it was, 20, 30 miles away. These fires usually burn out or get put out before they do any major damage. And that was not the case. This was a different type of fire. And so we can get into fire science another time maybe. But anyway, that fire came ripping through that town. I was there the day that they were evacuating everybody out of their cabins. It happened very suddenly. Friends of ours up there had to just grab their families and go tearing out of that town.
Yeah.
They were not able to save the town. It was completely overrun by the fire. There were some parts of the town that, because they were in a little gully or some type of topography, that the cabins actually didn't burn down. There's a few homes that were spared just by a freak of geography.
Yeah.
And some of the trees, including the biggest tree, they were able to keep from dying, which is the big stag tree. So when our lot burned through, it wasn't just that we kind of lost the trees on the lot and the things that made that lot nice to build on, but that whole sequoia grove was wiped out.
Right.
And the reason people would go up there to see it was gone. Like, it was a moonscape.
Right.
It's still pretty bad. The value of our property plummeted to very little.
To say the least. Yeah. Nobody. Yeah. Where you say, like, you're a major profit driver that brings people there is gone. It's not there. There's thankfully the one major biggest tree there survived, but everything else is gone. So where do you go from there? I mean, that's right. You want to talk about getting the wind knocked out of your sails. I remember when this happened, and even posting in our community and hearing, telling us about it. We're like, everybody is just like, oh my gosh, this would be devastating. Like, what do you do from there? Right. You lose it all. The value of the lot is, next to nothing at this stage compared to what you bought it for. And so, I mean, to say that you were devastated and the wind was out of your sails, I'm sure is an understatement.
Oh yeah, that was the end. It seemed like, we started down the path, we got knocked out. We couldn't really just sell the lot and try again, right? Like, we had to figure something out if we're going to keep doing this. I really didn't want to give up though.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's had highs and lows in their life, right? You get on with it. That whole path didn't work. We're gonna try to do something else. Well, I don't know what. We're gonna go back to the Vodyssey classes and look at different creative ways people are approaching this. We're gonna find something. And I eventually I kept looking, and I eventually found a cabin for sale within our price range. What would have been our price range, right? Had we started with that, and not having the enough cash to quite do it anymore, I was able to convince my cousin who lives in town, who I know, good friend of mine, my cousin, who is also interested in doing something like this, to go in on it with me. Now, people that haven't taken your class or other classes, we've done the Dean Graziosi classes before, and those are all very good. You learn how to manage fears and risk, but none of my partners had
done that.
Those things, and so we're dealing with a lot of hesitation and people changing minds, and at some point walking away from it. And I had to keep trying to convince people a lot. And that was actually kind of tiring, the ups and downs of anxiety, but not accusing anyone of anything abnormal. It's normal to
Absolutely. Yeah.
to go through that. And especially at this place we found, because there were no short-term rentals here. There wasn't anything going on here to compare what we were trying to do to. We didn't know if we'd be able to get cleaners up there in a remote area. We didn't know what kind of profits people would make in a place like that. We didn't know what kind of problems they'd face. So it's natural. People are naturally hesitant facing those kind of things. But we got it. We bought this old beat up cabin in a little town called Wilsonia. It's right in the middle of Kings Canyon National Park. You could walk from that cabin to the visitor center of the national park and to one of the biggest attractions, the General Grant tree, which is the #2 tree. From there, it's only 30 minutes to Sequoia National Park, 30 minutes to the floor at Kings Canyon National Park, the valley floor where all the hiking is.
Yeah.
For 20 minutes to Hume Lake, which is a big attraction here. Great hiking, great elevation. It's like the perfect spot for anyone who wanted to go to Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Park.
And this one's right in the national park, which is super rare, right? This one's in the national park, which you don't hear about very often.
That's right. It is privately owned land, and so you own the land and you own the structure.
It's crazy, yeah.
And
very rare.
Built in 1918, I believe.
Wow.
And only back then could you really do something like that in a national park. So people have held on to these kind of legacy cabins. Should something happen, if people abandon the use of it, I think if you got it burned by fire, you can rebuild it. But if people abandon the use of it for a certain amount of time, they probably revert back to national park, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we got this cabin and it was an absolute wreck. Like nobody wanted it. This one was easy to get because nobody wanted it.
Yeah, it was that bad.
It had been neglected for at least 40 years, right? It was just.
Oh, wow.
And maybe, since like the 70s or 80s, I doubt anybody been in there much at all. And so we didn't have construction experience. We didn't have a lot of money between the two of us, but we had YouTube. We had your class. We had friends who knew how to build and fix things. And we got to work with our own hands fixing up this place. We did the demo. We fixed the outside, got it watertight and actually looking really good. We did the certain stain on the exterior wood. We got a lot of compliments from neighbors on how it looked. And we kept running into a never-ending parade of problems with this place. The well went dry that summer. Right after we bought it. It had water when we were looking at it. After we bought it, it went dry. We had to figure out how to get water there. We eventually got a water tank put in, and water service trucked up the mountain.
Did it ever restore? Did the well ever come back? Because I'm assuming that was because of the major droughts in California, right?
That's right. I guess we'll find out probably in about 2 months.
Right. Finally, we were just talking before we hit record. We finally are getting some snow and some moisture in those mountains again.
Yeah, I think eventually we'll need to deepen the well, and that'd probably solve it in the long run.
Will they let you do that in the national park, or will they allow you to go actually make the well deeper and get it so you can hit the water?
Yes, we can go deeper. I don't know if we can go start a bunch of new wells.
Right, but you could go deeper on an existing.
Yeah.
Nice.
And all the neighbors up there have done that at one point, it seems like.
Yeah.
Some of them with these little hand tools from probably 1918.
Wow.
But yeah, we also found out after we got our first renter in there that it doesn't have a septic tank. It had rotted to nothing, right? Like it was just dirt. We had to go dig that out and put in a new one and all. There's just all these big issues, right? This money pit type issues. And we did a lot of the work ourselves. It took us 1.5 years to get that cabin fixed up. We'd go up there on Saturdays and spend the days, or my kids, it was during COVID, right? So my kids had homeschool, so they would do homeschool up at the cabin and then we'd work. Right? And that actually became kind of a nice break from all the COVID stuff back home and back in town.
Sure, like kind of a blessing in disguise a little bit, right?
It really was. It wasn't long before I have twin 13-year-old daughters. Their friends would go up with us because they wanted to get out of the house and go do this. So we were perfectly happy to work them
Yeah.
as much as they wanted, and they were actually very hard workers. They wanted to pitch in and tear out cabinets and build new ceilings and stuff. And
That's got to be pretty fun too. And I'm sure you watching that with your own twins, but their friends, and then having this, seeing their sense of accomplishment and when, gratification when the job was nearing completion and when it was done and some of those things. What a fun experience, even though I'm sure it wasn't fun at the time going through it all and having to put that much work and effort, but what a rewarding experience to be able to put that much work and effort into a property.
And just help their minds.
Yeah.
Right. Getting out of the house, fresh air in the mountains.
Yeah.
Accomplishing something. They were very proud of themselves. And we paid them, by the way. We weren't doing slave labor. But they got to contribute to the design ideas, and they came up with some really good ideas of what to do in certain places in the house, and got to actually install it themselves. And they just had a lot of fun. And then they spent a lot of time running around in the woods and having fun time as well. So those were cherished family memories, actually, even though it was tiring for us.
How was how was your cousin and the spouses? Were you because I can imagine, I've done a lot of rehabs, and I know that when you uncover that next problem or that next problem, sometimes that you said you were kind of having to be the motivational speaker before the deal, to put the deal together. I can't imagine that job probably continued throughout this project, right?
Yeah, and I think I was probably the one who needed motivating too at times.
Yeah, probably all of you being a support crew. Yeah,
full roller coaster ride of disappointments and getting it together, and they were wonderful. My cousin and his wife especially, they worked very hard, and once we got going on it, there's really no turning back. The only way out was forward.
Yeah,
and once we kind of settled in on that, I couldn't have done it without them. They were amazing.
Love it.
But yeah, in the beginning, it was hard to get everybody aligned on it because there was so much risk involved.
Mm-hmm. So that was a year and a half in, and to get it to where you were going to launch it, right? And we get to the launch date. How'd the launch go? What does that all look like?
That was great. We had predicted, again, we didn't have, Mashvisor couldn't help us in this area.
Right. There wasn't enough data. Yeah. And back then it's funny because we use completely different tools now. Back when we were doing it then, we were using Mashvisor a lot, which is, but all of them, even with Mashvisor, we couldn't find the data, right? Because there wasn't enough data to look at.
That's right. We were able to find out what the national park was doing. The national park had a 2-star motel up there and was renting out basic motel rooms for $350 a night.
Yeah.
In the summer. And they had these tent cabins that didn't even have a bathroom. You had to share a bathroom for like $180 a night. And we're thinking, well, we got to at least get a couple $100 a night for got a nice kitchen. We've modernized it. We didn't really know how much we'd get but we had it ready by summer, and thanks to the mild winter and the snow, we were able to work on it all through the winter. Normally the snow's up to the roof eaves. And it instantly booked the whole summer. Just like in 2 weeks, the whole summer was booked. We realized, man, we've set the price too low.
Yeah.
But we just had one person after another until we closed it in the late fall, and at least doubled what we expected to make. It was wildly successful. We closed it in the wintertime because of the snow loads, and then we had as we open it back up now, we're already getting bookings for this summer, but we're a little smarter on how we set the prices in there a lot.
Good. Put a little more money in your pocket.
It's performed very well. We consider it a gold mine. No regrets. All the work was worth it. The work was part of the process for us, part of the journey.
Right.
And we love the place. We love going up.
And I love your attitude of, the only way out of this, it was forward, right? When you said that, I mean, it's just like there was never really an option. You never had that thought of saying, we're just going to throw up our hands and walk away. This isn't worth it. There's too many signs. There's too many problems. You just kept going forward. And when you're going forward, eventually you get to that end of the road and you look back and you're saying, okay, this is why we did it. And it's got to be a sigh of relief though, after going through that much, that much work, that much loss in the very beginning, right? In the, lap number one, you have that devastating loss with the lot. You start to put the work into this one. It's challenge after challenge on a major rehab. I mean, I can't even imagine. I've rehabbed probably about 300 or 400 homes in my day, because that's what we used to do for about 6 years straight. And those older homes all have major challenges, but I don't know. I've never rehabbed one that was abandoned for 30 or 40 years. I mean, that's crazy to be able to, I can't imagine just going through some of that. So launched, everything's good.
All new electrical.
Yeah.
We had someone actually help us with that. All new plumbing, everything. We had kind of a mixed reaction from the community. The community was ecstatic to see this old eyesore. There are a lot of people that go out and spend their summers up there.
Yeah.
And they're also find out we're renting it out as a short-term rental. They got kind of upset about that. But honestly, in this case, at this location, this size cabin, we've not had any guests all summer there that have caused anybody any concern. Right? They're not big parties. They're not giant fires. There's things that scare people. And it's just, we do have to keep in mind the national park there. They don't want you making additions to it. It has to look the same way it did 100 years ago on the outside. But we navigated it. Okay. We just did it within their parameters and tried to take away any reason why they would come after us for working.
Awesome. And then we're going into summer number 2 on this property this year, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's
awesome.
right.
And so where do we go from here? Because this is not the end of the story for you guys. You started to, this is really property number 1, or sort of property number 2, because the lot was number 1. And then where does it go from here?
So as we were doing all that work, we already had our eyes on where to go from here. We hadn't finished it, but we knew we wanted to do this. We had made a goal in your class to do 5 properties. And so we're going to keep this going. We did have a rental property in town, where we say in town, down in the valley floor where we live.
Yeah.
It had a lot of debt on it. It was a 4-plex, and we were renting it out for almost no profit at all on a month-to-month basis. I would be surprised we made $100 on any given month. But it had appreciated a little bit. The few years ago, properties went up. We decided we could live without it by selling it, taking that money and putting it into one of these that would give us equal or more gross income as a 4-plex with a fraction of the debt. And then we wouldn't have to worry about the property owner laws that are being passed in California, where you can't evict people, or we're starting to be really scared, because if we had one person not pay their rent, we were going negative on this property. It was just too thin of a line to walk. We abandoned that. We sold it for profit, took that money, and we were on the hunt for property number 3. We went, so after the fires had cleared in the Camp Nelson Valley area, to our delight, Camp Nelson, the town itself, had been protected by pretty heroic firefighting. Mm-hmm. A lot of the forest on the north and west side of the town had been burned out from that massive fire that took our lot and the other community, a couple other communities. I can't really say we got like a good deal because of the fires, but we were ready to move forward and see what we could do as this place is going to rebuild from that. There were parts of this community that hadn't been burned on the east side. So we went on the hunt. And again, here we are competing with big city bags of money, coming up there, people living up there, telecommuting for work. This vacation spot became a residence area for a lot of people. And we had a really hard time making offer after offer after offer on these cabins that came up for sale. Make a long story short, we decided I've actually missed a step in the story. Prior to selling our 4-plex, we were trying to get a cabin here in this area. So rewind that for just a second.
Yeah.
not having sold the other property yet, we had no money, but I convinced my parents to do a deal with us like I'd done with my cousin. Hey, maybe you guys can get in too. We'll share the profits. You guys will have a place you can go up and vacation in yourself. I spent a long time making offers unsuccessfully until I finally got one. And as soon as we bought it, the next fire started up. You know, we survived that one, came close to the town, but it was all right. And they decided they wanted to keep this one. They changed their mind about short term. They're nearing retirement and they just want to go there all the time. They didn't want to rent it out at all. They want to just be there all the time. And, you know, that was contrary to what I was trying to do. But they're my parents. I love them. I want them to have a good retirement. I backed out, let them have the cabin, got back to work, sold the fourplex. And so a bunch more offers. We finally found cabin number 3 was a wreck as well. And that's the only reason we got it, because of the bidding wars. The good cabins were cabins in repair were gone or impossible. But I'm sitting in it right now. This cabin was not as old, as built 1970s, but it had been unimproved since then. A lot of work needed to be done to bring it up. And so we got my daughters and their friends wanted to keep doing this. So we brought them up here many times. And in 6 months of hard labor, either working at this cabin or up in Kings Canyon National Park, we got this one done. Got this one done in about 6 months and really went for it. It's on a nice lot. It's right on the highway, but not burdened by the traffic of it. A nice size, nice views out the back. This was a great spot for the people traveling up and down this road to see the sequoia groves, to stop over for a night or two and have a place to stay. It checked a lot of boxes for us. It was really hard work. All of our free time went into this, all of it, including days where I could telecommute for work and come up and work do my job during the day, and then at night just spend the nights here working.
Yeah.
And working, trying to get both cabins going and keep that was very, very challenging. While this was happening, the fire in Sequoia National Park broke out. So that's up by.
So this is fire number 3 that we're dealing with.
So this was fire. Yeah, no, fire number 2 wasn't so bad. Fire number 1 was devastating. Fire number 3 was devastating, and it ripped through Sequoia National Park. And we thought for a time that all of Sequoia National Park was going to go up.
Wow.
And so heroic firefighting saved the major attractions in Sequoia National Park. They saved the General Sherman tree. They saved the meadows. But they couldn't save everything. The largest sequoia grove in the world is called Redwood Canyon in Sequoia National Park, and it was just destroyed. Wow. And that was only like 15 minutes away from our cabin in Kings Canyon. And the fire came within less than a mile of our cabin in Kings Canyon that we had were wrapping up the construction on. And we thought we were going to lose it because it was burning out of control, completely out of control. Yeah, there are a lot of nights pacing around the house wondering if we're going to have a cabin after all.
Again, and you're on the heels of just losing your the lot was gone, right? And then fire number 3, breaks out, and you're like, okay, we've already kind of experienced this. So the fear is real, right? It's not like, not that it's not scary if you haven't had a total loss, but it's really scary when you're like, holy crap, do we have to deal with this again?
Exactly. There was no sign that we were going to, that cabin would be saved. There was no, and so the fire did eventually stop around the edge of that community, partially because the community had been so good at fire prevention measures, thinning things out and cleaning things up. They do this very well, especially since it's a national park. Yeah. And then partially from firefighter efforts, which were all right there at the park headquarters. So we feel very blessed. We feel very lucky that we made it, but there's a lot of anxiety around that as well. That fire burnt. We sit there and watch the fire maps every night, a couple times a day, and just watching it getting closer and closer. And even wondering,
okay, even if the town survives, the cabin survives, you always have that question of, is somebody going to still come here? Are people going to still come and, like, you just said, the largest sequoia grove is gone, right? I mean, those are some of the things that people are coming to see.
Yeah, when I say gone, I mean, it could be back in 100 years.
Yeah.
But not in my lifetime.
Right.
And so that was part of the horror of it, is how much is going to be gone.
Right.
And what's going to be left. Kings Canyon had a really bad fire about 8 years ago that it's just barely recovering from. But wiped out a lot of the forest that hasn't grown back yet. So these fires do happen. Fires are natural in the West, as you know, same with Utah.
Yep.
We almost need them to thin out, but we've preserved the forest so tightly that we don't do controlled burns outside the national parks and the national forest. We don't do controlled burns, and we don't allow logging anymore.
Yeah.
And so this is the big moment we kind of predicted 30, 40 years ago would eventually happen. And were the years it was happening. So we did survive that, and it's gone very well since. So we're very relieved. We finished this other cabin now on the highway in Camp Nelson, and got it. Actually, this one was open before the other one. This one was done faster, and it had a really great summer. Now, part of it was capitalizing on the loss of others who lost their cabins entirely in this area. So there were fewer cabins for people to stay at, and so ours was getting a lot of attention. But also because we had gone in and really modernized it really well and themed it and made it an experience, just like Shawn Moore teaches us to do, that people preferred staying here over a lot of the other cabins. And so we just did really well with what the program taught us to do on that.
Yeah.
And sure enough, here comes another fire the next fall. So 1 year goes by, everything's going great. On the south side where the forest hadn't burned, there was a big fire that erupted near California Hot Springs, which is dozens of miles away. But we learned from the last one that doesn't matter. If a fire far enough away can get to you, and it did, burning through, did hideous damage to the remote sequoia groves. Trail of 100 giants became trail of 98 giants. They did save the rest of it. A lot of the hiking areas were wiped out, extensive damage on this one. And it came right over the mountaintop to the south. We have a kind of, if you look out our window, there's a snow-capped peak, but the fire came right over that and down into our valley and just within a quarter mile of this cabin. So once again, the community's evacuated. All our bookings have to be canceled. People that were booked for 3 or 4 months later were canceling because they're sitting there in Germany watching the news of California fires, like, oh, I'm not going there. And so it wasn't just the immediate bookings, but we lost a lot of bookings after that. And the whole reputation of the area, the sites, the attractions, a lot of it was destroyed. And we just, the whole town had been evacuated. I was telling you earlier, to this hillside where we could all see the fire happening. Everybody was just watching and in terror as to see their cabins go up in flames, right? And so luckily the town was spared again. Again, firefighters jumped in on the scene. They did the fire breaks, they did all the clearing, and they saved the town again. But I could see the flames right out the window coming down the mountainside. It's just crazy. And so we figure we must have been crazy to try to do a vacation home in a place that was going to be eaten alive by wildfire, but the house is here. It survived it. Now we're starting to see a little bit of green back in the forest, but most of the trees are gone. Right around this community, though, where the firefighters protected us, there's a nice little forest, and some of the good sequoia groves were protected. The river runs through town. It's a beautiful setting for people to vacation at. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as the smoke cleared, we started, the cleanup began, and then pretty soon people are booking again. So we had to go through a few months of disappointing revenues or whatever. Yeah. But honestly, through all that overall, even with, if you look at a year-on-year basis, we have never lost money on this place, even when the disasters have hit. It's been a really good asset class to work with. And so here we are now going into getting ready for the next summer, and we're getting bookings. Cabins are filling up. We couldn't possibly have another fire here. We burned every direction around us for 100 miles.
Right.
Like, there's no more fires to worry. Like I wish I could just go start an insurance company and sign everybody up for fire insurance. I know I'd never have to pay anybody.
Right.
But that was the peak of difficulty for us was getting through these natural disasters and trying to get back up and going again. So we knew, even though we're anxious about continuing to do this, we managed to refinance this property and use that money to buy another one just down the street. It's right on the river. It's our best one out of all of them. Big, beautiful cabin. Not very many properties are right on the river in this area.
Yeah. Great
trout fishing. This is one of the country's good trout fishing rivers. And we just love that cabin is exceeding all expectations right now. Even during the slow times in the winter, it's full. My wife was just down there an hour ago walking some Hollywood people through it because they want to film a movie there and stay there.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
Like, there's all these good things happening. We thought we'd have a downtime in the winter, but we didn't. We actually made quite a bit, and the summer's booking out really nicely. So the sun is shining again.
And that's property number 4, right?
And that's property number 4. So like I told you, I had a goal to do 5 properties. Got property number 4, and when I made the goal, I said one of the properties needs to be international. I
remember you saying that. I actually remember our conversation about that. That is funny. I remember the 5 property goals, but I specifically remember it because you wanted one of them international, and you wanted them in California. And I was like, okay, you're a Californian, you're local there, some of the rules and regulations. And I was like, okay, there's going to be some things we're going to have to deal with. I didn't think we were dealing with what we were actually going to deal with, what you guys, I should say, dealt with. But it was, I actually remember you wanting the one in the international property.
That's right. And I'd forgotten I made that goal with you.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that. All these other things going on, I just forgot.
Yeah.
But I worked out a partnership again with some family members. My brother actually bought a cabin right across the street from us after he saw what we were doing. And he lives out of state. So we help manage it. And I learned the term for it later is co-hosting.
You're co-hosting. You're in the game.
I'm in the game of co-hosting now.
Yeah.
So that one we take care of, and we love it like our own place. And he's done a good job. We, again, rallied the troops and did the construction and
the Kimball construction company with the right.
We're not incorporated yet, so someone
right.
can take. And then we work together, and I didn't know where internationally I wanted to do it. I've lived in Brazil for a couple of years. I was born in Europe, but we finally settled on after doing a lot of research and looking up on a place in Portugal. And we found a place on the South Coast, a beach condo and a resort that we could get. My wife and I stayed there earlier in the year to go check it all out. We've done a lot of homework on this. And when this is over, it's in the process of acquisition right now. We'll just have this wonderful place on the beach over there. And we're all excited to be able to go there and use that as a base to explore other areas and spend time at it in retirement years. And it wasn't only until after we'd gotten that going that I realized that I had reached this goal that I made.
Yeah.
I had gotten one, or we're getting one international. That was part of my goal.
Yeah.
Like, I guess when you make a goal, sometimes it goes into your subconscious if you're not actively thinking about it. But and it's not just that we reached our 5 properties, but I really am grateful and happy for the properties that they are. Like, we have really outstanding properties through this.
Right.
They're far better than I thought I would have. Properties on the river, properties on the beach, properties in national parks.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. They're on great spots. And I it's far beyond what I dreamt it would be.
So are the I know that we're like now, like we're probably not worried about fires anymore. This, for, like you said, there's nothing else to burn for, anywhere close right now. Right. But are you, so lots of tons of stuff to unpack. We don't have enough time to unpack all of it, but I wanted to go through that process. When I hear you tell the story and I think about the story, it just gives me chills because one, you started with this property goals. You started with, I want 5 properties. I want 1 international 3 years ago, right? We're not even a full 3 years into you in this game with a lot of challenges, more challenges than, like I said, 999 or 999 people out of 1,000 would have said maybe it's a little much for me, right? And so you one deserve the credit and to say you actually kept going, right? You didn't get lucky in this, right? It was you made a goal, you persevered, you rolled up your sleeves. There's grit and determination, not only for you, but your family members and everybody that had a piece in putting this together and getting through some of those tough times. And ultimately you look and you're like, I can't believe it. We're here now. That we actually, 3 years in, we've reached our goal of what we were really trying to build. When you say, I can't believe this, does it make you want to do more? Does it say, hey, listen, we're gonna now kind of take a breather and just enjoy this and realize what it's done for lifestyle and financial freedom and really appreciate that. I'm sure you appreciate it all the way along, but what does it look like now? Where's the mindset now that you've actually accomplished that?
Well, and in addition, we are happy. The money we're making is great compared to what we thought it would be.
Yeah.
And it's changed our lives. We're able to pay down debts. We're able to get things set. We're starting to trying to figure out retirement in 2 or 3 years. That part is wonderful, but it also built a life mantra, an attitude about problems in general.
Love it.
And there were so many times that we said, you know what, guys, this is just going to be a memory someday. We're just going to keep doing this. We're going to keep coming up. We're going to keep nailing boards to the wall. We're going to keep digging that hole. And someday this will just be a memory and we'll be enjoying it. And just having that goal in mind that it's just someday it's going to happen and to keep going. And that really helped us keep going during a lot of it. And also helped us from attitude wise, knowing that we can do hard things.
Yeah.
Like we realize we have abilities in us that we didn't know we had. And we have an attitude now that, we're looking at the Portugal deal, like it's risky, it's this, it's that. But, guys, remember what happened last time? Remember, we do the work, we get through whatever it is. And we see ourselves, we're problem solvers now.
Yeah.
And all we do every day is we get up and we go solve problems until they're gone. And when they're gone, we sit back and put the money in our pocket.
That's
right?
So, yeah.
Just be a problem. Enjoy being a problem solver every day. It'll eventually be a memory. We'll eventually solve it. And we're different people now because of that. We're better people. We're able to handle a lot more.
I love it. And those of you listening, go rewind that last 2 minutes. I don't know. I was getting chills while you're saying it. And just listening to how, like you're saying, your identity changes. It's like, hey, listen, we feel tougher and more confident and grittier and hey, we can deal with anything. And how fun is it that you dealt with it as a family? I can't imagine, the bonds that are formed in all of those tough times and just that identity shift that's changed to say, we can do hard things. I love when you say that stuff. I'll go re-listen to this episode and I get so inspired by these stories of grit and determination and hard work and then coming out the other side different, right? And like you say, our identity has changed, but we're different because we know now we can handle more than we probably ever thought we would ever, more than you would have ever signed up for. Let's say that, right? You might not have looked and said, if I know all these things I'm going to deal with, I might not sign up for that in the beginning. But looking back, would you have done it differently? Would you have said, now that you're on the other side of it and all those tough times, because I'm sure there was lessons learned in all of them, but I'm sure there was plenty of times you were saying, I could definitely do without this. And now looking back, would you have still gone through it if you had to do it again?
Absolutely. Except for the first one, I may not have bought that lot.
Right.
I could have done without them.
Could have gone without that one. Close, and then we have a total loss on a lot. Yeah.
We're the other challenges, they were part of the process. And one of the best things too is what it did for our kids. All of our kids participate. Some of our kids have grown up and gone to college, but they would come home. And when they came home, they knew they were in for a work experience, and we enjoyed it. Like, we made it fun. And they look at it too, like, you know what, when they're faced with hard things in life, they can look back and say, we did that. Maybe I can do this.
Yeah.
When we climb that mountain, we could probably get this homework assignment figured out, or whatever's challenging them.
Yeah.
And so it's been a real blessing in the lives of my kids to have kind of been able to survive COVID with something worthwhile to do, and hard and challenging to accomplish things, and build their character too.
I love it. And I'm going to just before I'm going to wrap up with one last question with you, but before I wrap up, because I want to give you the last word on this, is I just want to thank you. This has been an amazing conversation. I want to thank you for sharing your story. I love sharing successes, winning, but more importantly, what it takes to come out on the other side of winning a lot of times. And a lot of times we don't talk about rolling up our sleeves and the challenges and the hard work that goes into it. And really just thank you for sharing that. And then, I always ask people when they've gone through those challenges, would you do it again? And I've always heard a resounding absolutely. And so it's we love to talk and share that's the grit and determination, the hard work and everything else, because now the Kimballs walked out on the other side of this, and they're different, and your identity is different. You're just, not only are you changing your life, lifestyle wise, financially with the assets themselves, but just our identity and knowing that we can do hard things. And I think at the end of the day, to me, that's even more valuable than what the monetary things that we get from some of those assets. And so I appreciate you sharing that story. It's one that I am so excited for people to hear. I know a lot of people are going to share this story, on outside on the podcast and YouTube and everything else. And it's going to be, I know it's inspirational to me. I know it's going to be to a lot of people. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. So final question, if you had to go back and give yourself some advice and said, okay, if here's the goals, here's what I want to do. If you could go back to, rewind 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years and say, here's some advice I would like to give myself after going through all these different experiences, what would that be? And again, it's for those listening, it's always nice to hear from somebody that's been down the road a little bit before us, to hear what they might do differently, or what they should be looking forward to as they take on any new challenge.
Well, I'm sure just about everybody wishes they'd gotten into this arena sooner. Absolutely. Yeah. I would have told myself to forget this other stuff, go into this. And if I were to give myself advice, or to anyone, don't be fearful. Or if you are fearful, that's okay. There's a role for fear.
Absolutely.
But if you're hesitant because of that fear, just do it anyway.
Love it.
If you've done your homework, you're not sure how it's going to go, it's going to go great.
I love it. And I always say too, and I love that advice on fear. Fear is a sign that maybe that there's growth potential, right? If we're scared about something, we know that there's that real potential for growth, and there's room for fear, but don't let fear paralyze you into not taking any action. And so great advice. And Bill, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm so excited to see what the future holds for all of you in the whole family. I can't wait to see on the beaches in Portugal and in that property come to life. Hopefully you're going to spend some time there this summer. It might be rented though. You got the summer season coming up there in Europe.
We have a rule: don't go in the summer. That's rental time.
I like it. That's how I was like, we're going to go use it outside of the peak season. Yeah. So awesome. Well, guys, if you got any value of this show, which I know you did, this is probably going to be one of our most shared episodes. And so if you, the only thing we ever ask from you is to like it, share it with somebody that you think will get value from these episodes, whether it's on the podcast or YouTube. Subscribe, leave us a review, give us a thumbs up. If you got below more than 30 seconds, give us a full review. And we really, really appreciate that. The only way that this show grows is by you guys sharing it. You are always the best part of the show. And we always appreciate you spending your time with us. And I always leave you with one challenge at the end of every episode, and that's pick one thing that you can do today to go build that life that you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website?
Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodyssey.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.